Hello, crafty friends, and welcome to my channel, Create with Kalia. I'm Kalia. Today I'm going to be creating a two-page layout featuring these 9 photographs. I'll tell you the story of these photographs in a little while. As I said, we're going to be doing a two-page layout, and I'm going to be using this old paper pack from close to my heart called Route 66. I absolutely love this paper and have not yet even cut into it. This is a really old pack from close to my heart, and I initially thought that I would use this top piece of paper. However, as I leafed through the packet here, I realized that I'm not ready to cut into the very road trip themed paper, and instead I'm going to be using the blue license plate paper. This is one of the older paper packs that came with cardstock included in it. I'm going to cut a section of this paper into 5 inches for the right side of my layout and to 3 inches for the left side of my layout. I'm going to also cut down some white daisy cardstock and take a 1/4 inch off of one side, then rotate my cardstock 90 degrees and take a 1/2 inch off of the next side. You may have just noticed that I actually cut only a 1/4 inch off. I realized my mistake in a little bit here, but I wanted to give you the correct measurements right away. Next, I'm going to take my Moonstruck cardstock and gut the center out of the cardstock so that I can save the centerpiece for a future use. My plan is to have a 1/4 inch border around 3 sides of my white cardstock, so I'm cutting my border at 3/4 of an inch in order to leave myself a 1/2 inch on those 3 sides to put down adhesive. Next, I'm going to take my white cardstock, line it up, and this is where I realize that I have made the error in cutting, so I trim an additional 1/4 inch off of one of the sides of the white cardstock. Now I'm lining up my pattern paper to see where exactly I want it to be on my layout. I bump it down just a little bit here to see if I like that blue border, and I realize I don't like that, so I'm going to leave the pattern paper up at the top. As I've mentioned, this is an older paper pack, and so I'm not going to gut the white daisy because I need it behind the pattern paper for stability. Next, I pull out the sticker sheets that came with the pattern paper, and I like this red sticker for some additional visual interest and to bring in another color into the layout. I only want to use one sticker on this layout, and I want it to be more narrow than the full-size sticker, so I decide I'll cut it in half. The easiest way I've found to do this is to remove the backing and then to stick the sticker onto my paper trimmer so that I can easily cut it right in half. I then place the sticker on the pattern paper right at the edge to make a nice border. Now I'm going to bring my photographs back in, line them back up how I plan to have them on my photograph, and I'm looking at these areas as possibly being where I'll include some embellishments. I'm trying to bring in some additional colors onto the layout and realize that this sunflower cardstock and clover meadow cardstock from close to my heart match the banners that are in the photographs. I'm planning on using the clover meadow cardstock as the mats for my photographs. However, I realize I likely don't have enough left in my stock. So I use my ring of cardstock samples to find a close match. I realize that Close to My Heart's willow cardstock is very close to clover meadow, so since I have a lot of that in my stock, I'll end up using that. I do decide to use the darker side of the Close to My Heart two-tone cardstock as the mat for all of my photos. My larger pictures are all 5 by 7, so I'm going to cut the cardstock to 5 1/4 inches by 7 1/4 inches. This will give me a 1/8 inch border around all of my photographs. I'm also going to gut the cardstock for the larger pictures, just like I did with the blue cardstock, so that I can save it for a future use. My smaller pictures for this layout are all cut to 3 by 4. However, I realize as I'm finishing cutting my 5 1/4 by 7 1/4 inch mats that I may not have enough room to have the photographs matted and have them fit nicely across my layout. I don't really like how this looks. I would like to have a little bit more separation, a little bit more of a white border around the pictures. So I decide to trim my mats down by another quarter of an inch wide. That means that my photographs are 3 3/4 wide by 3 inches, and my mats are 4 inches by 3 1/4 inches. I had already put adhesive on the back of this picture, so I just carefully stick it to my paper trimmer in the correct place to make my cut. And then I trim it down and trim down my mat. I decide not to gut the smaller mats as I don't feel that that will leave me enough usable cardstock. So I just am content to put my pictures down and start building my layout. I'm going to finish matting my photographs and then I'm going to start working on my journaling and creating the title for my layout. I use the print and cut feature of Cricut Design Space to make my title. It says Ready, Set, Go Kart. I then also use the offset feature in Design Space to create the additional border around my title in Willow cardstock. I adhere the white cardstock directly onto the willow cardstock. Then I'm going to use some thin 3D foam tape to give the whole title some additional dimension and visual interest. I do use a lot of foam tape because I don't want things to collapse while I have my scrapbook stored on its bookshelf. Once I have all the foam tape down, I'll peel off the backing, and then I'm going to adhere that up above the right hand 5 by 7 photograph. So the story behind these photographs. My family had a cabin for a long time in Wisconsin, and this go-kart track was a short drive from the cabin. 4th of July was always a big time for my family to get together, and one of my dad's favorite things to do was to go to the go-kart track. More on that in a minute. I've now pulled out my road trip stamp set, which is a stamp set that was originally designed by Close to My Heart, but that Stampin' Up purchased when Close to My Heart went out of business. I found this one-way stamp on the stamp set that I absolutely loved and thought would go really well on this layout. I'm going to season my stamp to remove any of the manufacturing gunk that might still be on it. And then I'm going to do a practice stamp in black ink just to make sure that the coverage on the stamp is good. I'm happy with how the image looks after the second time that I stamp. This set does come with die cuts, so I've already cut out the die image from some white cardstock, and now I'm ready to stamp on that die. I do my best to line it up and then pop this off, and I'm really happy with how that has turned out. Next, I'm going to stamp directly on my layout using this flag stamp from the Racecar birthday stamp set from Close to My Heart. I'm going to start building up an embellishment cluster in this area and thought that that stamp would be absolutely perfect for this layout. Back to the story about the photographs. So my dad absolutely loved to take the whole family to the go-kart track every time that we would get together for 4th of July. These pictures are from our trip to the go-kart track in 2007 when my oldest was about 4 years old. In the journaling block on the right-hand side of the layout, I talk about how this was an annual family tradition and also identify all of the people in the photographs. They include my dad, stepmom, sisters, brother, uncle, aunt, and cousin. As I'm looking at some of the other places that I want embellishments, I find this Vroom stamp that is also from Racecar Birthday. That works for me perfectly under this picture of my brother. I put that stamp back on the carrier sheet, and the next stamp I find is this flag, also off of the Racecar Birthday stamp set. I start looking around on my layout to see where the flag might work and realize that as I move it to the right-hand side of my title, that's the perfect place for me to have some additional embellishments. I decide to stamp the flag in both Moonstruck and Cranberry inks from Close to My Heart. Since the lines on the flags are straight, it makes it very easy for me to cut around them on my paper trimmer to leave a little bit of a white border. Once the flags are cut out, I'm going to take some black cardstock and trim about 1/8 of an inch of a piece so that I can make a pole for the flag. I'm going to tuck the flags in behind my title. So I put the blue flag up on some thin 3D foam tape, and I put the red flag up on the thicker 3D foam tape, just to make sure I have enough dimension and height so that both of the flags look nice. I also realized that my title isn't sticking down fully anymore, so I used some glue dots behind the title to make sure that that is fully adhered to the willow cardstock behind it. Now I'm pulling out my Capture the Adventure stamp set. This is another stamp set that was designed by Close to My Heart, but Stampin' Up! Bought when Close to My Heart went out of business. I use the Family Stamp and Memories stamp to stamp between the two 5x7s on my left-hand page. Next, I find my Timberline stamp set from Close to My Heart. This is another very old stamp set. Even though this is a hiking themed stamp set, I really like this Making Tracks stamp and think it'll fit perfectly underneath the flags on the right-hand side of my layout. This also shows that you can use your stamps for more than what the stamp set was necessarily designed for. I encourage you to look at your stamp sets and think outside the box about what other themes you could use your stamps for. I'm stamping this in cranberry ink, and once I have it stamped and I'm happy with the way that it turns out, I'm going to fussy cut it out of the white cardstock, add some 3D foam tape to the back, and then add it to my lower right hand embellishment cluster. I really like how that turned out. Next, I'm going to look at building up the embellishment cluster on the left-hand page a little bit more. I'm trying to make sure that I have 3 points of interest in a triangle, so a visual triangle to help direct your eye around my page. I find this Love This Place stamp on the Scenic Route stamp set, also from Close to My Heart, and think it works perfectly on this layout, especially since it looks like a road sign. I like it over here in this little spot on my photograph that had a little bit of a blank area. This stamp did not come with a thin cut, so I stamped in cranberry ink and then fussy cut the sign out as well. I'm going to pop my one-way sign up on some 3D foam tape, and then I'm going to put the Love This Place on the thicker 3D foam tape so that I have some dimension in this embellishment cluster as well. A little bit more about the pictures. I am in the pink shirt on the bottom left-hand page, and my oldest kiddo is sitting next to me. As I said, she was about 4 years old when we had this trip to the go-kart track. And one of the coolest things is that they had these double seat go-karts, so she could ride with me even though she wasn't old enough to drive her own kart. The middle picture shows the big steering wheel and the big cushion that's on the steering wheel in the event that we had any mishap. Going to this go-kart track was at least an annual adventure for as long as I can remember. And there was one time where I did actually have a mishap. I found one last stamp on my Scenic Route stamp set that I thought would work nicely on this layout. So I've stamped that under the vroom in Moonstruck ink. I've also pulled out some black acrylic stars to place around my embellishment clusters for some additional texture and interest. My mishap at the go-kart track happened when I think I was around 12 years old. We had some cousins visiting from California, and as we were going around the track, one of my cousins started bumping into my go-kart. I looked over to see what was happening, and as I did so, I drove straight off the track through some pine trees and ended up in a ditch before I stopped. The go-kart owner was obviously quite upset, and I was told that if I did that again, I would never be allowed on the go-kart track again. Fortunately, nothing was damaged, and the only thing that was hurt was a little bit of my pride. We also never had another mishap at the go-kart track like that again. I'm attaching the acrylic stars to my layout with some glue dots, and those should hold these on very nicely. And that's it. My layout is done. This layout was a great way to use up some of my back stock of cardstock and pattern paper, along with several different stamp sets to make embellishments. I hope that you've enjoyed watching this process video, and here's another video that you might enjoy. Thanks for watching, and craft on!